What does it mean to be an NFL legend? Win a lot of games, win a lot of rings, win a lot of accolades, win a spot in the Pro Football Hall of Fame? Sure, those will make you a legend if you're able to climb the mountaintops and do what few can even dream of. But that's not the only route you can take. If you're, say, former NFL quarterback Ryan Fitzpatrick, you have your own strategy on becoming a football legend. The league has seen many interesting players and personalities enter and exit football's biggest stage since the dawn of football. But as you'll see, I would argue few had a career just as interesting and just as compelling as the one Fitzpatrick had. Growing up in Gilbert, Arizona, Ryan Fitzpatrick had blurred the line between jock and nerd in a way that I guess people think is impossible. But at one point, he had a 4.5 GPA as a generational test taker, was an award-winning student athlete, and played multiple sports like basketball, baseball, and football. Fitzpatrick led the Hawks of Highland High School to the Arizona State Division I playoffs and even helped them win the 1999 Fiesta Region title. It should be noted he also played against legendary edge rusher Terrell Suggs in high school, and that Suggs was also a superstar running back at this time. If you think this doesn't make sense, welcome to football. Fitzpatrick's high school success could just about earn him a scholarship anywhere, right? So he went to a true college football powerhouse, enrolling at Harvard. In one of football's more obvious bits of trivia, Fitzpatrick played for the Harvard Crimson football program in the Ivy League. It's well documented, but realize that Harvard's annual acceptance rate is a little over 3%, and then consider that you're there to play quarterback. I can't even name another Harvard quarterback. Anyway, Fitzpatrick was pretty dang good here too, breaking the school's record for total offense, winning Ivy League MVP in 2004, and guiding them to the Ivy League title with an undefeated 10-0 2004 after beating their arch-rival Yale Bulldogs. Naturally, the most recognizable part of that game wasn't the blowout, but that Yale fans had pranked Harvard fans into holding up placards that spelled out "We suck." But Fitzpatrick did not suck at Harvard, and he got considerable attention at the 2005 East-West Shrine Bowl. Not because he played great, he played alright, but because coaches loved the way he practiced, at quarterbacking and at test taking. The NFL used to have the Wonderlic test to judge a player's ability to answer questions quickly. Many quarterbacks have finished far below the highest score of 50, even Tom Brady had a 33. But Ryan Fitzpatrick had 50. Okay, that was later revealed to be 48, but while that isn't the highest score from any football player, it is the highest score from any quarterback. Just don't ask Fitzpatrick about that because it's his least favorite question to answer. His favorite question likely annoyed many coaches. In an interview with Harvard Magazine back in 2004, Fitzpatrick loved the "fuck it, chuck it" style of backyard football. Yeah, don't make mistakes, but making up plays as you go were always the best, he said. And hopefully, it was enough to garner interest from professional teams. During the 2005 NFL Draft, Fitzpatrick watched from his parents' house down in Arizona and waited for his name to be called. The more rounds that passed by, the more bummed out he became. He had gotten calls from 11 teams that were interested in signing him should he go undrafted, which he sort of but didn't fully appreciate. And then, pick 250 came, and he was scooped up by the St. Louis Rams. The first Harvard quarterback taken since 1981, and the first from the Ivy League since 1984. Fitzpatrick was excited that he was even drafted, especially considering his favorite quarterback growing up was Jim Everett of the Rams. Head coach Mike Martz liked Fitzpatrick well enough too. Martz was always trying to get into quarterbacks' heads by standing next to them and screaming at them, but he doesn't really do that with Fitz, whose ability as a fast learner really impressed him. Fitzpatrick at season's beginning earned a spot on the 53-man roster and was a third stringer behind Mark Bulger and Jamie Martin. Both quarterbacks got injured, propelling Fitzpatrick off the bench in the middle of the Rams' Week 12 game against the 1-9 Houston Texans, making him the first Harvard quarterback to play a game in the NFL. Trailing at the half 24-3, it looked like St. Louis would hand Houston its second win of the season. However, this is where the legend grows, the legend of Fitzmagic. The Rams, behind Fitzpatrick's first NFL experience, outscored the Texans 30-3 coming out of the half, securing an impossible 33-27 win in overtime. This despite the Rams trailing by 10 with 34 seconds left from the Houston 43. Not to worry though, because Fitzpatrick's 4th and 6 pass to Isaac Bruce is a jaw-dropping 43-yard touchdown. An onside kick and field goal later, we got to overtime, and we exit on the Rams' first drive, where a bubble screen to Kevin Curtis goes 56 yards to the house. As Fitzpatrick claims he felt invincible during the comeback, he threw 3 touchdown passes off the bench in his first NFL appearance. Only one other quarterback has ever done that, and coincidentally enough, that guy was Jim Everett, eventful company to be in. Fitzpatrick made his first start the next week against the Redskins with all this impressive momentum. In that game, he threw for under 170 yards and a pick in the blowout loss. Then the next week, he threw 0 touchdowns to 5 interceptions in the blowout loss. Then the next week, he threw for 69 yards, 1 pick, and was benched in the game that was a loss, but not a blowout loss. That would be his last game in a Rams uniform. Look at it this way, Fitzpatrick got some experience as an NFL starter. Not many people can say that. And the money helps too, helping him buy a ring for his girlfriend Lisa. It was a beautiful moment. He proposed to her at a McDonald's. Lisa said yes, forgiving Fitz for taking the money out of their shared bank account. Now, he was on the Rams roster in 2006, never came into a game, but he can say he played with fellow Harvard alumni in linebacker Isaiah Kasavensky. Harvard is becoming a football factory, as Fitz puts it. That's even more apparent the next year when he reunites with former teammate Clifton Dawson, a running back for the team Fitzpatrick has just been traded to, the Cincinnati Bengals. Fitzpatrick didn't play in 2007 either. Matter of fact, his most noteworthy incident was accidentally jamming the finger of receiver Chris Henry, who had just returned from a lengthy suspension. That changed in 2008. Starting QB Carson Palmer tore a ligament and tendon in his throwing elbow, allowing Fitzpatrick to start the majority of the season. Let's see how his first Bengals start went. He tripped on the second snap of the game, off to a great start, then turned the ball over 4 times as the Bengals lost. The Bengals dropped their next 4 games to move to 0-8 as Fitzpatrick lost a fumble in each of those 4 matchups. It's unheard of for Ryan Fitzpatrick to lead the Bengals to the first overall pick, though, so they win a nail-biter in Week 9 over the Jaguars. Then, in Week 10 against the Eagles, they tied, in the NFL's first ever tie since 2002, and what won't even be the only time that happens between these two teams. After going 1-3 in their next 4 games, Fitzpatrick said, "Throwing sucks, who needs that?" and only threw 9 passes in a game he played the whole way through in Week 16, as the Bengals entered Cleveland in 18-degree weather and 26-mile-per-hour winds and escaped with a 14-0 shutout win. The Bengals ended up winning their last 3 games to finish 4-11-1. No first overall pick to report about here. Fitzpatrick was a free agent following 2008, choosing to take his talents east by signing with the Buffalo Bills. He was actually the first free agent visitor to One Bills Drive in the offseason and called it a truly impressive organization from top to bottom. Probably BSing here, but he thinks he's truly going to love this place. He has no idea how much. Repeating the script from the Rams and Bengals stints, Fitzpatrick made his Bills debut in Week 6 for a concussed Trent Edwards. His numbers were bad, but he and the Bills did just enough to pull out a squeaker in overtime against the Jets. Making his first start the next week at Carolina, his numbers again weren't sexy, but as the Bills pulled out another win, writers began to notice something. Fitzpatrick was taking chances down the field that Edwards was not. And even as his passes weren't always on the money to Hall of Fame receiver Terrell Owens, Owens appreciated that he was even taking those chances. T.O. played with quarterbacks that had great careers: Steve Young, Jeff Garcia, Donovan McNabb, Drew Bledsoe, Tony Romo, Carson Palmer. As far as favorites go, Fitzpatrick is way up there for him. Shocking, right? But back to the 2009 game log. Fitzpatrick threw 5 interceptions in his next 3 games, but he did throw for 1 touchdown against the Jaguars, a 98-yarder to Owens that ranks as the longest of the receiver's illustrious 15-year career and tied for the longest play from scrimmage in Bills history. After that struggle, he played really well in a blowout win over the Dolphins in Week 12. In the second quarter, he ran on a tightrope for a 31-yard touchdown that was the longest run from a Bills quarterback at that point, and one of the more unexpected. Fitzpatrick certainly didn't think he was going to get the touchdown and sounded like he was winded at the end of it. He hadn't had to run that far in the minute. But the biggest play came when the Bills called up a deep ball up 17-14 with 2.5 to go in the fourth. It was an audible from Fitz at the line of scrimmage, switched over to a rocket to Owens, an awesome one at that goes for 6. And that was some of the 24 unanswered fourth quarter points that Buffalo scored that day. You might be asking, how do you follow up a crazy game like that? I'll tell you, by throwing for less than 100 yards while handing the game-losing interception over to the Jets the next week. That's how. The Bills split their next 2 games. Fitzpatrick was inactive for Week 16, and that finished the season that was just about a wash. Actually, despite fans and media insisting he shouldn't play in Week 17, he did, starting against a 14-1 Colts team, resting their starters and torching the practice squad for 3 touchdowns in a decisive Bills win. Whether these Bills fans liked it or not, he had to continue playing and trying his best to keep his job by any means necessary. The local media wanted them to land a guy like Jimmy Clausen, Tim Tebow, or maybe trade up to get Sam Bradford, who will be the first overall pick in the 2010 NFL Draft. But with whoever or wherever decision they go, it's time for Fitzpatrick's legend to grow. Growing in 2010 was his beard. It's gone to Amish-level lengths, which allows him to nickname himself the Amish Rifle, among the great nicknames ever assembled in pro football. Trent Edwards isn't progressing as the guy at this point, so he's benched in Week 3 and waived a week later, giving Fitzpatrick those starting job keys for much of the season. He played his heart out in Week 3 against a 14-2 Patriots team and kept it close, but also threw 2 interceptions in the loss, including on a game-tying drive. He was horrible the next week in a loss to the Jets. The Bills lost their Week 5 game to the Jaguars too, though Fitz did play well there. The next week against the Ravens, despite 2 third-quarter interceptions, he had 4 touchdowns, 2 of which were beautiful second-quarter dimes. He helped Buffalo force overtime and had a drive going past regulation, but the Ravens forced the takeaway off receiver Sean Nelson and walked it off with a 3-point kick. By the way, the Bills were 0-6 at this point. Now it's 0-8. However, the losing ends in Week 10 in a tight 14-12 win over the Lions. As Fitzpatrick's beard was growing into impossible proportions by this time, so too was his status as a folk hero. The next week at Cincinnati, Fitzpatrick and the Bills flipped deficits of 28-7 and 31-14 at halftime into an absurd 49-31 win. It's one of the greatest momentum swings in a football game, led by an average Joe of all people. Indeed, after the game, one Buffalo News columnist referred to Fitzpatrick as, quote, the general of no-names. No-names would want to associate with how their game against Pittsburgh went. In overtime against the league's top defense, Fitzpatrick threw a game-winning bomb to the very good Stevie Johnson, only for Johnson to drop it. The Bills lost that game, and they lost in the next one against the Vikings before Fitz played pretty well in wins over the Browns and Dolphins. No dice against the Pats in Week 16. Fitzpatrick had 5 turnovers. The Bills in total commit 7, and they lose by 31 points. His 2010 season ends on a sore note, as a sore knee kept Fitzpatrick out of the season finale against the Jets. But on the bright side, he was ensured he would be the team's starter for 2011, an announcement that made him so happy that he immediately went to a barber to cut his lucky beard. It was probably the best quarterback season the Bills had seen in 8 years anyway. That only sets up a 2011 season that neither Fitzpatrick nor Bills fans will soon forget. The Bills win their season opener at Kansas City in dominating fashion, as Fitzpatrick, who had his finest game to date, went on to joke that this was the first time he actually had to be benched for beneficial reasons. Against the Raiders, Fitz led Buffalo from a 21-3 deficit to a wild last-second victory where he threw the game-winning touchdown on 4th and short. At 2-0, he and the fans were obviously thrilled. They had more reason to be. Patriots quarterback Tom Brady had faced the Bills 18 times and only lost once. He and they had bullied the Bills for far too long. It was their turn to know what that was like. The Bills used basic survival skills to erase a 21-0 deficit, taking the lead in the 4th quarter off a pick 6 off Brady. The Pats spent the next 7 minutes chewing up clock and knotting the game at 31-31. Here is where the name Fitzmagic rises from the ashes to write another chapter for its scruffy owner. Fitz's passing wizardry drove the Bills 79 yards in 3 plays, eating some clock at the buffet table to set up a pitch and catch, buzzer-beating field goal. Bills win 34-31. The Patriots have won 3 Super Bowls with Tom Brady. They'll win 3 more with him this decade. This loss doesn't even affect them all that much for the season. They'll clinch the AFC top seed and make it to the Super Bowl and lose. But consider walking in Buffalo's shoes. They had only started 3-0 once since 1992. They don't get to celebrate like this often, slaying the big bad division rival of the AFC East, if for one day. Allegedly, Brady took the loss so poorly that Fitzpatrick says he refused to shake his hand after the game, a move that made Fitz resent Brady to this day. The fans didn't want to leave the stadium after the game though, and Fitz couldn't blame them. It was his favorite moment of his entire playing career. One regular season win that ultimately meant nothing to the team it came against, meant everything to the city of Buffalo. The Bills dropped their next game in a close defeat to the Bengals, hang on to beat the Eagles in Week 5, and lost another close game by 3 points to the Giants after Fitzpatrick was picked late with the game tied. But at 4-2, he was playing quite well. The Bills seemed to agree. In their Week 7 bye, they extended him for 6 years and just under $60 million. He was the first Bills quarterback to earn an extension from the team since Doug Flutie back in 1999. It was with this deal that Ryan Fitzpatrick had ascended from the relatable underdog to a superhero in a flash. In their annual Toronto game a couple days later, Fitzpatrick was introduced pregame as the fan base absolutely erupted. They had completely fallen in love with the guy. And that had no reason to change as the Bills won their only Toronto game in a 23-0 shutout win over the Redskins. Fitzpatrick suffered a sore chest but was only sacked twice compared to the 10 Skins quarterback John Beck received. So hey, he got off lucky. We've had a lot of Fitz magic to sit through this season so far. And that would be all. The Bills fell off their 5-2 start to finish 6-10. Fitzpatrick threw 10 touchdowns to 16 interceptions in the last 9 games, and he led the league at season's end with 23. That sore chest suffered in the Redskins game? Well, turns out that was a broken rib. Fitzpatrick denied that the injury affected his second half slump, but Stevie Johnson revealed the injury affected Fitz to the point where he couldn't even say a full play in the huddle without great pain, not even one breath. So cool, that's why his numbers fell off. With the 2012 season ahead, Fitzpatrick built on the promise of his 2011 and played even better. By even better, I mean only slightly better overall. Again, the Bills finished 6-10, but even in a season this mediocre, a few games did stand out. Fitzpatrick returned to his home state of Arizona in Week 6 and had grown up a Cardinals fan, which on paper sounds troubling due to his love of Rams quarterback Jim Everett. Don't these guys play in the same division? Yeah, they do now. But the 90s Arizona Cardinals, neighbors of California where the LA Rams played in the NFC East, the Rams in the NFC West. Makes sense to me? Makes sense to you. The Amish rifle wasn't anything special here, but the Bills won in overtime, which I'm sure he was very thankful for. That was Fitzpatrick's yang. His yin came against the Titans a week later. He threw a costly pick up 6 with 3 minutes left, and the Bills lost. Against the Patriots in Week 10, he and Scott Chandler could not connect on a game-winning touchdown in the New England red zone, followed by a game-ending Fitzception 1 play later. Fitzpatrick wasn't living up to his contract, and he knew it. After a solid performance in the season finale win over the Jets, he and his family stayed at Ralph Wilson Stadium a bit after its conclusion. He had a feeling he had just played his final snaps as a Bill. He did. The team released him the following March after he refused to take a pay cut. It pained him either way, though. He had truly embraced playing for the city, and having started all 16 games for the first time while there, twice even, he appreciated that they embraced him as much as he did them. Bills media and fans also took note at just what Fitzpatrick brought to the table, assuming Bills fans didn't break it already. He was the first Bills quarterback since Hall of Famer Jim Kelly with 2 consecutive seasons of 3,000 passing yards. Doesn't sound like a lot now, but remember, these are the Bills of the early 2010s. They're not used to those numbers. He brought excitement, high passing peaks, to a fan base that had not seen much promise in the 21st century. They hadn't made the playoffs since 1999, and won't again until 2017. But the Fitzpatrick era in Buffalo has a special place among Bills fans, because they could really tell how much he wanted to make this work. On the move again, Fitzpatrick went to his 4th team in the Tennessee Titans in March of 2013. He was signed as a backup to third-year starter Jake Locker, and though he was a fiery competitor that would do anything he could to start, he did also accept that helping out Locker with his career wasn't mutually exclusive. That help lasted 3.5 weeks before Locker left Tennessee's Week 4 game against the Jets with a hip injury suffered on a devastating hit. It's another case where Fitzpatrick replaces an injured or struggling quarterback off the bench, but this time his team is actually winning. His sole touchdown in said 38-13 win was a hilarious play to Nate Washington. The throw itself was awesome. The hilarious part comes when Washington runs over a ref on his way to 77-yard pay dirt. The following 2 weeks against the Chiefs and Seahawks were both starts, both losses, and both games where Fitzpatrick's numbers sucked. He went back to the bench when Locker came back healthy to start the next 3 games. Locker hobbled off the field in the third game after a handoff in what turned out to be a season-ending Lisfranc injury to his foot, and Fitzpatrick came in and nearly pulled off another crazy comeback before losing a fumble down 22-20, resulting in a game-sealing defensive touchdown. He played well in the next 2 games against the Colts and Raiders, losing to the Colts and walking off the Raiders on a last-second touchdown pass. At 5-6, the team's playoff hopes were still kicking. Then they started screaming when the Titans closed the year, losing 3 of their last 5. I would like to point out one game in that stretch, though. It's Week 15, at home against who else but his hometown team, the Cardinals. These Cardinals are pretty good and have an easy win in tow when they get a pick 6 off Fitzpatrick to go up 34-17 with 6:13 to go in regulation. He responded with a touchdown drive, then a field goal drive to cut the deficit to 7 with 52 seconds left. Somehow, the Titans got the onside kick, and somehow again, Fitzpatrick led a game-tying touchdown drive that, in incorrect sports terminology, is going to extra innings. A play after connecting with Nate Washington for 33 yards, Fitzpatrick connected with Antoine Cason, a defensive back for the Cardinals. The Cardinals, offering no apologies for the takeaway, later kicked the field goal to end this heart-stopping classic 37-34. Like his Bills and Bengals stints, Fitzpatrick's last game as a Titan resulted in a win, but no matter. He was cut on Pi Day in March. That's a smart person joke for a Harvard grad like Ryan. He was also smart enough to recognize an opening in Houston, inking a 2-year deal with the Texans, his 5th NFL team. And in his 10th NFL season, this is what Fitzpatrick's beard looks like. And this is what the Texans look like in their first 2 games with Fitzpatrick. 2-0, followed by 2-1. But in Week 4, an old friend was coming into town. It was Fitzpatrick's first game against the Bills since their days together. The love was so deep that he had trouble convincing his own son, who became a Bills fan, to try and root for the Texans. He had a better time firing up his Texans teammates in a passionate pregame speech where he discussed how much a win against his beloved team would mean for him. Even after he was embarrassed post-game finding out cameras recorded his speech, we could all tell this was not a guy that would cling to the "yeah, well, it's just another game" phase you see from players against their former teams. He made no effort to hide it. The numbers were a little ugly, a touchdown and 2 picks, but you know what? The Texans won this one anyway, 23-17. Looks like they bought into what Fitzmagic was selling. If it hasn't been apparent already, allow me to introduce you to the Ryan Fitzpatrick cycle. Sports artist Drawplay Dave created a chart cycling the many ups and many downs for the quarterback's career. Let's see, signed as a backup, starter gets hurt, he plays well and earns a starting role, gets paid, sucks, and gets released. Rinse and repeat. For the next 5 games, the Texans are in the suck part of the chart, and Fitz is benched for Ryan Mallett. Whoops, Mallett tore his pec prior to warm-ups in Week 12, so following that game against the Bengals, Fitzpatrick is back as starter against the Titans. We are now at the starter gets hurt, thrown into games section of the cycle. And not only will we move to plays very well, earn starting spot, but this will be a record-setting day for Fitzpatrick. His 6 touchdown passes are the most in a game from any Texans quarterback ever, and he even throws a touchdown to 3-time Defensive Player of the Year and teammate J.J. Watt. Watt heavily praised the throw and Fitz. Superstar receiver DeAndre Hopkins praised him too. So did Hall of Famer Andre Johnson. Neither of them had seen a passing performance that explosive, at least when it came to touchdowns. Fitzpatrick's numbers declined as expected, but they weren't too bad the following week in a defeat of the Jaguars. Here we go. In Week 15 against the Colts, his season and the Texans' late playoff push came to an end as he broke his left tibia. Years after this game, he'll confess that in 2018 he texted his warmest regards to Redskins quarterback Alex Smith, assuring that the doctors would fix Smith up the same way they did him. See, Fitzpatrick thought he and Smith had the same injury, only to then realize Smith would need 17 surgeries to even stay alive, let alone keep his leg, and making Fitzpatrick feel like the biggest jerk in the world. At any rate, the 6-touchdown game is carrying his 2014 season heavily. But hey, he's got a career-best 95.3 passer rating, which ranks 9th among all starters. Good stuff. But in the offseason, the Texans had traded Fitzpatrick, letting him know they didn't need any help going 9-7 as they did so in 2015 and 2016 to make it 3 consecutive seasons with that record. As for Fitz, he was heading back to the AFC East to play for the Jets of New York, reuniting him with offensive coordinator and former Bills head coach Chan Gailey. He was set to back up then starter Geno Smith, who has his own incredible story that will be talked about another time. Here, a teammate breaks Smith's jaw over a payment of $600. And looking at the Fitzpatrick cycle, we are now at QB gets hurt, Fitz gets thrown in. I was at the Week 1 Jets opener against the Browns. I'm a Browns fan, not on purpose. If you're visiting MetLife Stadium, Jets fans have a reputation for being quite hostile, which they were here, but it is what it is. Also hostile was the connection Fitzpatrick would have with newly acquired receiver Brandon Marshall, who will finish with his second 15-yard season in 2015 and will later cite Fitzpatrick as quite possibly the best quarterback he ever played with. Marshall made one of the most impressive athletic plays of the season by ripping an interception away from safety to Sean Gibson. The second instance where Fitzpatrick saw an interception against the Browns get fumbled back to his team. Down 7-0 at the time in the second quarter, that provided a pulse for the Jets, who outscored the Browns 31-3 for the rest of the game. It's a silver lining for a Jets team that goes hot and then cold as they settle on a 5-5 record through 10 games. But for the rest of the season, the flames arise once more, and so too does the Fitzmagic. The Jets cruised the victory in Week 12 over the Dolphins with 4 touchdowns from Fitzpatrick. On the road against the Giants in Week 13, so at home. The Jets had an impressive goal line stand on a Giants team trying to go up 3 scores late before Fitzpatrick led 2 clutch scoring drives to go to another overtime game. There, the Jets won after their field goal was made while seeing the Giants miss theirs. Another easy victory and Fitz masterpiece followed in Week 14 over the Titans, followed by a close victory over the Cowboys where Fitz led a clutch last-second drive. He's so happy he doesn't even care that he has a bloody nose. He later quips that he'll stop taking photo shoots with famed handsome receiver Eric Decker, who is also having a terrific season. When CBS Sports' Tracy Wolfson asked him about his nose here, he's video bombed by legendary Jets center Nick Mangold, who squeals at Fitz, who squeals back at Mangold. His dumbfounded look at the camera and his realization that this interview is live really seals the deal. It's so awkward, yet goofy and wholesome. Just another reason to root for these Jets, as they have their eyes set on a playoff push. Coming to town in Week 16 is Fitzpatrick's favorite person, Tom Brady. Brady's Patriots are 12-2 and can clinch home field advantage throughout the playoffs by winning either one of their last 2 games. The Jets are 9-5 and need a win to stay ahead in the AFC playoff race. This game went to overtime as it often does, and the Patriots got off on the right foot by winning the OT coin toss. In a move that surprised everyone though, New England elected to kick to the Jets, because of wind I guess. Fitzpatrick in 4 plays drove the Jets down to the opponent's 6, using the 2010 modified overtime rules where you need a touchdown on your first possession to win the game. A field goal just won't do here. The next play, Fitzpatrick's sideline throw to Eric Decker does it. 26-20 Jets. Ball game. What a happy moment for Fitzpatrick. Not only did he throw the game-winning score, he also finally got to shake Brady's hand. After chasing him down anyway. This loss affected the Patriots more than the 2011 Week 3 one did. They lost to the Dolphins the following week as well. And they lost home field advantage to the Broncos, who beat them in the AFC title on their way to the franchise's third Super Bowl victory. For the Jets, similar feelings rose to the ones felt in that Bills-Pats game 4 years prior. Head coach Todd Bowles, Hall of Fame corner Jarrell Revis, even Brandon Marshall, who called it the best moment of his entire NFL career. There were tears of joy in that locker room. The playoffs weren't clinched yet, but this felt like the turning point for a team that had spent the previous 4 seasons becoming an absolute joke after a previous decade of moderate success. If they could just win in Week 17, the Jets would make it back to the playoffs. They just had to get by the Buffalo Bills. 2 birds, 1 stone, right? Ryan Fitzpatrick has the opportunity to wrap up his first playoff appearance and do it against Buffalo, led by former Jets coach Rex Ryan. This Jets offense was hot. An all-pro year from Brandon Marshall. The aforementioned massive year from Eric Decker, where he put up over 1,000 yards, and a 1,000-yard season on the ground from Chris Ivory. The Jets could do this. Fitzpatrick could do this. As the game progressed, the Jets trailed 13-0, but 2 Fitz touchdowns condensed the deficit to 19-17 entering the fourth quarter. The Jets' first drive of the fourth quarter took them down to the Bills' 14, facing a 2nd and 10. In his previous 23 quarters spanning back to Week 12, the Amish Rifle was playing the best football of his career, throwing 15 touchdowns to just 1 interception. Everything is going right for him. The consistency is finally there. We are in the plays well part of the cycle. Going into the fourth quarter, it's time to suck. Fitzpatrick's second down pass is looking for Decker and is intercepted by a corner who, and I am not joking, predicted this exact play 4 days prior. So no touchdown, no go-ahead field goal, no points. Drive number 2. It's now 22-17 Bills after a field goal, less than 4 minutes left. The Jets get to their own 45 and set up a 3rd and 9. Fitzpatrick appears to be looking for Brandon Marshall crossing the middle of the field. Someone forgot to block Marcel Darius, though, and he hit Fitzpatrick as he let go of the ball. This wobbly duck was picked off. The Jets' season was slipping away. Their plan B, a Steelers loss to the Browns, was not happening. They had to win to clinch playoff football. Drive number 3. They've used up all 3 of their timeouts and have 44 seconds to drive 82 yards for a game-winning, season-saving touchdown. First play, Fitzpatrick runs for 9 yards. Second play, the Fitzmagic comes through in this game at long last as he finds a streaking Kembrell Tompkins down the sideline. Tompkins has the ball in his hands, but in one of the most infamous plays in recent Jets memory, has it jarred loose by Mario Butler to fall incomplete. If Tompkins held on, he had a clear path to the end zone for a miraculous touchdown. Third down, Fitzpatrick's middle-of-the-field pass for Decker was picked. After playing clutch football down the stretch and avoiding nearly a whole year of playing Fitz-tragic football, Ryan Fitzpatrick's slippers no longer fit. There was no sugarcoating it. This was the worst moment of his career. He said it himself. It didn't even feel like a great season for him after an ending like that. His teammates wanted him back for 2016. He wanted to be back. The Jets' front office wanted him back. But contract talks stalled between the two after he took the $8 million they offered him per year as an insult. They said, "Fine, here's $12 million." And he said, "Fine, I'll come back," and signed an extension in July. If the 2015 Jets were the party, the 2016 Jets were the hangover. Weeks later for Geno Smith against the Cardinals. When Smith tore his ACL against the Ravens the next week, Fitzpatrick came back in to lead the Jets to victory. But he was pissed. Post-game, he blasted the front office, the coaches, the owner, for giving up on him in a display of honesty that most players are trained exactly not to do. He was angry, though, and he'd continue to play angry. The numbers didn't get any better, the boos kept coming down, and he was benched again. He did try to remain professional about it with the younger Bryce Petty, who he was excited to see play and make his first start. He was once that kid in St. Louis. before a shoulder injury to Petty brought him back in for Week 17. A win over the Bills where he played his best game of the season and got a little revenge against the team that ripped his heart out a year prior. Back then, Fitzpatrick said he still enjoyed playing in spite of all the turmoil the team was facing. But he got vulnerable in 2021. He hated playing football in 2016, the promising 10-6 2015 club, the way that season ended, and the 5-11 finish in 2016. It made him question a love for football that had existed inside him for decades. If it's any consolation, Fitzpatrick's 2015 is among the best QB seasons in Jets history. I understand that's not a high bar, but from 2010 to the present, 2015 will be the closest the Jets have ever gotten to making it back to the playoffs. Fitzpatrick became the first Jets quarterback to throw 30 touchdown passes in a season. He still is as of this writing. Fitzpatrick pulled himself together after the Jets voided his contract and made his way to team number 7, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and it was a fit that was long overdue. See, the Bucs are named and based around pirates, and pairing them with Ryan Fitzpatrick, who looks like a pirate, is a match made in heaven, as the adage goes. And he'll be helping get the best out of third-year starter Jameis Winston. Some of the weirdest games of Ryan Fitzpatrick's career seem to happen against the Arizona Cardinals, because in Week 6 at Arizona, Winston suffered a shoulder injury, and Fitzmagic was brought off the bench yet again. He had nearly pushed the Bucs to a huge comeback down 31-0 before losing 38-33 on an onside kick recovery. And it was back to the bench for him. Back off the bench again, though. 3 weeks later, he relieved an injured Winston again. The Saints won that game by 20, but the Bucs would go 2-1 in the games Fitzpatrick started before he rested back in the Tampa Bay waters for the last 5 games of 2017. They liked him well enough, so they gave him a 1-year extension to back up Winston in 2018. That's when Winston was suspended for the first 3 games for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. And would you look at that, Fitzpatrick is starting again. Again. The opener is in the Big Easy against the Saints, a favorite by many to reach the Super Bowl, and 10-point favorites in this game. But if the Saints are dreaming of interceptions galore today, they're living in a fantasy world. The Buccaneers exploded that Sunday, running out of New Orleans like bandits in a 48-40 win. Fitzpatrick rose to godlike levels, throwing for 417 yards, 4 touchdowns, and a passer rating 2 decimals above 156. This also features legendary receiver Mike Evans' favorite touchdown catch of his entire career. A 50-yard cannon Fitz threaded to him over Evans' hated arch nemesis, corner Marshawn Lattimore from Ohio State. Go Buckeyes. Week 2, Tampa Bay is hosting the Eagles, the defending champs, and Fitzpatrick torches another defense. This one adds an interception, but also 402 yards, 4 touchdowns again, and a passer rating of 144.4. This is all pro caliber stuff going on, the kind of stuff that makes you want to wear other teammates' clothes in your post-game interview. Fitzpatrick created one of the more iconic NFL memes of 2018 when Deshaun Jackson let him borrow his post-game wardrobe that he had brought to the stadium. You see this? This is a quarterback that is having fun playing football again, more than a year after the joy of the game was sapped from him. In 2018, Ryan Fitzpatrick was transforming from court jester to court judge. That sort of continued in Week 3, where he led a near comeback against the Steelers before losing by 3. But he also threw for 3 touchdowns to 3 picks. Another but. He had also thrown for over 400 yards again. The first time a quarterback had ever done that in 3 consecutive games. His teammates wanted him to keep starting, even when Winston was back from suspension. Deshaun Jackson compared it to giving it to the hot hand in NBA Jam. I think NFL Blitz would be the more appropriate comparison, but whatever. Winston was inserted back after Fitz struggled in Week 4 against the top Bears defense. He was back 4 weeks later against the Bengals after Winston was benched following 4 interceptions. Fitzpatrick took a Buccaneers team trailing 34-16 in the third quarter and tied the game up late 34 apiece. Shout out to his 2-point conversion to Chris Godwin, where he shuffled past a sack prior to tying it up with said pass. The Bengals walked it off anyway, on a game-winning drive just after. But the Fitz magic was back on, for about a week. He was fine in the loss to the Panthers in Week 9, before encountering one of the strangest games I've ever seen. The Buccaneers in Week 10 rode all over the Redskins' defense, carving them up for 501 yards of offense on their way to scoring 3 points. Yeah, the Buccaneers only punted once all game, put up more than 500 yards of offense, and only got a field goal out of the entire day. The fewest points a 500-yard offense has scored in any game in NFL history. The Bucs had 5 drives go inside the Skins' 20. 3 points. That sucks. So does Fitz the next week against the Giants. He's benched after 3 picks, and that ends the season and his time in Tampa Bay. There's 3 games inflating his numbers, but this is also the first season where Fitzpatrick has surpassed a passer rating of 100. Career season. In a vertical offense perfectly suited for his gunslinging ways, he really gave the NFL a season to remember. I truly believe he had gone into Tampa accepting that he was very likely going to be a placeholder, and in doing so, found his spirit again, giving his team all he could once more. The cycle proclaimed him. It always does. But I think football fans started realizing around this time that it wasn't important that he wasn't good enough to win you the biggest games. What mattered was every time he went to play, it was always a party. Fitzpatrick's 8th team is also among the best party cities in the US, Miami. And apparently he was partying too much in the offseason because he confessed that he had some weight gain from eating a lot of birthday cake. His kids have birthdays early in the year. He has 7 kids. Also kids' friends' birthdays. He's going to have to go from peak off-season form to peak in-season form, as he puts it. And he does, as he'll be the starter for his 3rd AFC East team, a Dolphins team that, to start, is historically trash. They had a negative 92-point differential through their first 2 games, the worst from any Super Bowl-era team and the 3rd worst ever. So Fitz was benched yet again. For Josh Rosen, who started 3 games and was also pretty bad. So he was benched for Fitz. That occurred in Week 6 against the Redskins, with the Dolphins trailing that game 17-3. You'll never guess what happened. Fitzpatrick led another 4th quarter comeback, only for the Dolphins to bungle the game-winning 2-point conversion when Kenyon Drake dropped a screen pass that looked like it was going nowhere anyway. I mean, come on, look at all these unblocked defenders. So the team was 0-5, but they were only outscored by 1 this time instead of the combined 137 points in their first 4 games. Then it took some time, but finally they had won a game in their 8th try against the Jets behind another Fitz masterclass of 288 yards and 3 touchdowns. They won the week after that against the Colts before dropping games to the Bills and Browns, setting up a final 5-game stretch where, well, they weren't going to the playoffs regardless. But just like the end of 2015, Ryan Fitzpatrick was playing career best ball. Against an Eagles team favored by 10.5 points, the Dolphins erased a 28-14 third-quarter deficit by outscoring Philly 23-3 to stun the visiting team. Fitzpatrick played great in this one. Not so much in round 2 against the Jets, but he had led the go-ahead field goal drive late, only for the Jets to strike back with a buzzer beater of their own. He was fine the next week against the Giants, though the Dolphins were crushed in that one. And then we have the final 2 games of the 2019 regular season, and 2 teams will need his help in order to achieve the greatness they desire. First, let's tackle the Bengals game. These Bengals are 1-13 and were close to the 0-16 status many thought these Dolphins would achieve, but a Cincy loss would secure the first overall pick of the 2020 NFL Draft, and they'd almost certainly take Heisman winner and eventual college playoff champion Joe Burrow from LSU. And Fitzpatrick was doing his part, throwing 4 touchdowns and skating the Dolphins to a 35-12 lead with 11 minutes left. And then the Bengals scored 23 unanswered points, including 16 in the final 33 seconds as they recovered an onside kick and got a buzzer-beating touchdown and 2-point conversion combo to force overtime, giving everyone on the Ohio-Kentucky border ICU visits. The teams traded punts once, then twice. Then the Fitzpatrick cycle broke out to rest at the plays very well section. He drove the Dolphins inside the Bengals red zone. The Dolphins kicked the game-winning field goal, and the Bengals clinched the worst record for the 2020 season. Fitzpatrick in 2022 joked that he had changed the Bengals franchise with this game, which he absolutely did. Cincinnati selected Joe Burrow first overall, and so far have won 5 playoff games with him, the same amount they won in their franchise's entire existence before 2020. Thanks, Ryan. Next, we have the Week 17 game at New England against a Pats team that destroyed this Dolphins team 43-0 in Week 2. The Patriots don't need any help tanking. In fact, they need to win this game to secure a first-round bye. If the Patriots lose and the 11-4 Chiefs win, the Chiefs will get the second seed and the bye instead. Looked unlikely. The Pats were 17.5 favorites, so if they were to lose, it would be tied for the largest upset in a regular season game by point spread since 1978. The Fitzpatrick cycle would not change this time. He took the Dolphins 75 yards on 13 plays, and his pass to the end zone for Mike Gesicki was caught. Dolphins ahead, 27-24. Down in the Midwest, the Chiefs had cemented their victory with a touchdown of their own against the Chargers. The significance of both games prompted announcer Kevin Harlan to literally announce both games live on the spot, something I don't think has happened before or after. Chiefs fans saw the score in Foxborough and went nuts. The Dolphins held on, and Fitzpatrick continued his feud against Brady, who he has despised despite beating his teams 3 times, more than a lot of quarterbacks can say against the GOAT. Brady has gone on to say he likes Fitzpatrick and doesn't understand why he hates him. It might be the handshake thing, Tom, but different sides, different stories, so who knows who's right. The Pats dropped to the 3rd seed, lost in the wild card round to the Titans, and Brady bounced for Tampa Bay the following year. As for the Chiefs, they stole the 2nd seed and used that to ride to their first Super Bowl appearance and win since 1969. In turn, this kicked off the NFL's most recent dynasty, and we have Ryan Fitzpatrick to thank. Thanks, Ryan. Now, Fitzpatrick guiding this Dolphins team to 5-11 doesn't sound special, and it probably isn't. But think of context here for a sec. This team was actively giving away good players for draft picks. They deliberately tanked more than any NFL team has ever deliberately tanked, this side of the 2016 Browns anyway. For evidence, look no further than their own run game. They were dead last in attempts and yards on the ground, started 4 different running backs, saw 7 different backs get at least a carry, had 0 100-yard games from any player, and saw just one back, Mark Walton, reach 200 yards overall. Then we get to Fitzpatrick, the Dolphins' leading rusher. At the age of 37, he finished with a staggering total of 243 yards and also led the team with a whopping 4 rushing touchdowns. Beyond that, he got a career-best year out of receiver Devontae Parker, who surpassed 1,200 yards and marked the only time in his career he even reached 800. Oh yeah, and he was playing with a defense that gave up the 4th most points in a season up to that point. Combine all that with an offensive line that, according to Pro Football Reference, got Fitzpatrick hit a league-leading 66 times, and it's a miracle they even got 5 wins. This was supposed to be one of, if not the, worst teams in NFL history. They were, and then they weren't, and Fitzpatrick made that happen. Thanks, Ryan. He's accepted his time as a bridge quarterback for the Dolphins, who take a QB of their own in Alabama's Tua Tagovailoa in the 2020 draft. It's a season where they barely missed the playoffs but vastly improve at 10-6. Somehow, it's also one that's far more mentally exhausting for the quarterback room. Fitzpatrick played pretty well in the first 6 games. Okay, the Pats and Seahawks games were stinkers, but the other 4 pretty clean affairs. And the Dolphins had crawled out of a 1-3 start to get back to 500 with a 24-0 shutout of the Jets heading into their Week 7 bye. That is when he got benched. Yep, a quarterback who had been mostly playing well and came off a game where his team won 24-0. That quarterback got benched. Fitzpatrick was shocked and heartbroken. He's never been this invested in a team since his Bills days. He's been benched for a number of reasons, many of which have been deserved. But this is how he's benched? It made him question if he'd ever play football again or even get the chance to. But he wasn't alone. Chan Gailey, his old OC, in the same role here, was also shocked. Even the guy he was benched for, Tua, was shocked. But again, you gotta get the rookie quarterback up to speed. And Fitzpatrick helped, as he had done just about every other time he was a placeholder, which was every time. The Dolphins kept winning, even if Tua wasn't really playing all that well. They won 3 straight after the benching, so 5 straight overall, and were in a close game against the Broncos in Week 11. But then, in the fourth quarter, Tua was benched, Fitzpatrick in. On the final drive, he drove the Dolphins to the red zone, but was picked. Game over. Head coach Brian Flores claims Tua was benched for performance reasons and would be back to start the next week against the Jets. Because of a thumb injury, Tua didn't start or play. Fitzpatrick did. He played well, and the next week they beat the Bengals to complete a stretch where they won 7 of 8 games to sit at 8-4. Tua started that game. Okay, cool. Just make it consistent and then don't give him a reason to doubt himself. Brian Flores gives him a reason in Week 16. The rookie is benched against the Raiders in the fourth quarter after throwing for 99 yards. It's clearly a pain in the ass for Fitzpatrick and Tua to constantly shuffle in and out of the lineup. And after retiring in the future, Fitz called Flores out for how he treated Tua and for how power-hungry he seemed in the 2020 season. All while Fitz acknowledged that he liked Flores and noted he thought he learned from his Dolphins tenure by the time both left Miami. But point I'm getting at, it was getting closer to 2016 Jets levels than Fitzpatrick would have liked it to. But in this game, his last as a Dolphin, he saved his best throw for last. After Miami and Las Vegas exchanged 19 combined fourth quarter points, the Dolphins found themselves at their own 25, down 25-23 with 19 seconds left and no timeouts. Fitzpatrick takes the snap. He sees receiver Mac Hollins covered and looks to throw. Only problem for him. Vegas's Arden Key has a hand on his face mask and grabs it so hard Fitzpatrick will later describe the feeling as getting his head ripped off. Only problem for Key. Fitzpatrick fires one of the greatest throws of this century on a no-look skyhook to Hollins, who catches it safely at the Raiders' 41. Tack on a 15-yard penalty from the Key roughing call too. Move the ball to the Vegas 26. The 44-yard field goal goes through, and Miami eliminates the Raiders from playoff contention while keeping their season alive on possibly the signature play of Fitzpatrick's NFL career. The Dolphins needed a win against who else but the Bills in Week 17 to clinch a playoff spot. Again, this would be Fitzpatrick's first in the NFL, and with how proud he is of this Dolphins team, he wants it more than ever. He doesn't start. Hell, he doesn't even play because he's come down with the COVID. So he's out for Week 17, and the Dolphins get blown out in a 56-26 ass whooping. Their season is over. As great a season as it was stressful. Fitzpatrick spent 4 consecutive seasons in paradise, lounging in America's meme state in Florida and becoming a meme himself. A legend, if you will. His final team, team number 9, will be the Washington football team. No, that's literally their name. He was excited and called the situation in 2021 the best situation he's ever been in. Interesting comment considering they had one of the worst sports owners ever at the time. But I think it comes from the anticipation he has from playing with guys like Terry McLaurin and Curtis Samuel, both from Ohio State. Go Buckeyes. Also, look at this photo where Fitzpatrick's holding a blackboard and professing his excitement to play for DC, acting like a kindergartner. Isn't he adorable? And he makes the start in Week 1 against the Chargers. Throws 6 passes, leaves in the second quarter with a hip injury, and never plays football again. That hip was a tad more dislocated than Fitz anticipated, so when he realized, oh crap, I need surgery on it, the recovery time needed would extend past the regular season. So his year and his career were both over. As he decided with his family moving to Arizona, he wanted to graduate into being a full-time dad. And so, One of the wildest careers in NFL history has concluded. Its inventor off to explore new adventures and leave the rest of us to pass his story down to the generations ahead. Did you pay attention to how many teams Fitzpatrick started for? He started for every team he was a member of, and it's an NFL record, 9. For Fitzpatrick to start for 9 different teams is a testament to him being good enough to keep the starting job and how inconsistent he was that he couldn't hold on to one. But this is also a guy that got taken with the 250th pick in the 7th round. Via StatHead, 57 7th round quarterbacks have at least played in an NFL game, and that dwindles down to 35 when you look at how many started at least a game. As far as who is even close to as good as he was, the only 3 that can hold a candle are Brock Purdy, Matt Castle, and Gus Frerotte. Purdy has been insane for a Mr. Irrelevant pick, but he doesn't have nearly enough volume so far as the other 3. Castle played for 7 teams and started for 6, but never started close to 100 games. Neither did Frerotte, who started for 7 different teams. And then you have Ryan Fitzpatrick, who, as a fellow 7th round pick, played in 166 games, started 147 of them, and threw for 34,990 passing yards and 223 touchdowns. Those numbers are easily ahead of any other 7th round quarterback, an extraordinary feat. His 169 picks are also a 7th round record, but you can't question the man's love for the deep ball. Going back to his passing and touchdown totals, returning to StatHead's data shows us that 997 quarterbacks in their research have played in at least one game, and this decreases to exactly 800 who have even started an NFL game as a quarterback. As it stands, Fitzpatrick's career passing yardage sits as the 35th highest ever totaled by a quarterback, about in the top 4% for quarterbacks to start one game, and the top 3% for quarterbacks that were even on the field ever. Keep in mind, this doesn't even include the quarterbacks who were active and never got on the field, or the guys that, never even played at the NFL level, never college or high school. His passing touchdown total is 39th all time, around the top 5% for any quarterback that started, and the top 4% that even played. The average quarterback career lasts 30 games according to Pro Football Reference. The 166 Fitzpatrick played in means his career lasted more than 5 times as much as the average NFL quarterback. Again, a 7th rounder, one that couldn't catch a starting job if it were the common cold. Compared to most NFL quarterbacks or any quarterback from any level of football, Ryan Fitzpatrick is immortal, a god. That's what makes him an NFL legend. A Hall of Famer? No. But he is someone who you would be able to watch and say, that guy can make me run through a wall. And we know he loves football just as much as he loves loving football while playing on different teams. You may have assumed that his favorite team to play for was Buffalo, and that's right on the money. He never got to be on a playoff team, and those Bills, outside of the first half of 2011, never came all that close. But they embraced him, so he embraced them back. He felt like he understood them, he says. They are his people. Fitzpatrick's love for Buffalo was so great that he appeared as a fan during their historically dominant wild-card victory over the Patriots in 2021, being caught shirtless in 7-degree weather and going crazy every time the Bills scored. He even posed with other shirtless Bills fans during the game, but maybe not enough to the point where he had to put his shirt back on to avoid frostbite. Smart. This bit continued as recently as the 2024 divisional round matchup between the Ravens and Bills, where Fitzpatrick was made as the pre-game Bills legend of the game, going shirtless yet again and chanting along with a sellout home crowd the Bills' famous mantra, "Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?" As far as the members of the so-called Bills Mafia go, Fitzpatrick has to be in the top 1%. His favorite quarterback is even Josh Allen, who he says makes it effortless, and he'll continue to make it effortless when he goes on to win the Most Valuable Player award in 2024. In case you still wondered if Fitzpatrick loves football, so far he's had a successful career in broadcasting as a TV analyst for NFL and Amazon, even teaming up with future Hall of Fame cornerback Richard Sherman, who at one point trashed Fitzpatrick during his playing career. Want to know what they're doing right now? Being best buddies? Yeah, such is life. And such is the Amish rifle. Everything I talked about in this video, and there's been a lot, leads up to the last point I want to leave you with. Remember the Ryan Fitzpatrick cycle? The one where he would play great one week, get paid the next, suck, then get benched, then get cut, then start it all over again? It's kind of like if human emotions were captured in professional football. We have our highs, the best moments in our career or in our personal life, and then the waves we ride high on go back in, and we fall back to earth. The same is said of us at our worst. We feel overwhelmed. It seems like nothing can go right. We feel all alone. Maybe our career or personal life, well, they're not going the way we wanted to. But then, the waves we're drowning in return us back to shore and go back in. We're back down to earth. That's what his NFL career means to me. Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't play perfect. Many times was bad, but never gave up. Always wanted more. And lasted 17 years in a league where the average career lasts 3. No matter the emotions, the highs, the lows, his love for football never completely extinguished. And his players, coaches, and the fans, they all noticed. Ryan Fitzpatrick didn't just have a football life. He had the football life. My goodness, you guys are still here. Thanks so much for watching. This was the longest video I have ever made. 62 minutes, are you kidding me? Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell. Make sure you check out these videos as well. Check out this playlist. And hey, I'll see you next time. Take it easy.